evening, konnichiwa, to all our viewers from across the globe. We're doing this after a little tiny break, considering the Japanese weekend was last weekend, but we're still processing all of that over the week that was, along with Good Friday, Easter coming up this weekend. So as we sort of relax into the pace, let's look at all the Easter eggs that we saw over the racing weekend last week, hear out from the highlights of what was there. A lot of action has been happening in the paddocks over the last week, including a certain Red Bull person looking at getting wings and moving out of F1. But we'll discuss all of that in a bit more time, in some more time. I'm just too excited to talk about all of that. But let's introduce all our panelists once again, starting off with Prashant. Hey, Prashant, what are your key highlights from the weekend?
Hey Vivek, hey everyone. Exciting race once again. I would probably say that in two elements. One, we thought Mercedes was lucky in the past few races, okay, but at a circuit like Suzuka, they were absolutely nailed it, correct? Though Russell was slightly behind. Kimi is absolutely leading the pack. That was great. Another great battle between Ferrari and Mercedes, and also within the Ferrari. So great excitement where Hamilton and Leclerc drove next to each other. Luckily, they didn't crash, but I think that was an open invitation to challenge each other. Question is, will Russell come to catch up? Right? I think from a race standpoint, it's very straightforward that nobody can catch up with Mercedes right now. But I know that we're going to talk about it in this discussion over the next few minutes as to what's going to change in the coming month because of the long break which we have. But right now, it's Mercedes versus Ferrari, Kimi versus Russell, and Charles versus Hamilton. Great to see from a racing standpoint.
Thanks for that. Let's move over to Vignesh. Hey, Vignesh, what's your take from the weekend that went by?
Okay. Once again, a wonderful welcome to all the guests and people who are seeing this out there. The point which I felt was very interesting was both the, how I say, the table toppers, rankers, like the top five, top six, they struggled in quali. If you see Ollie Berman eliminated in Q3, he is fifth in the driver standing. And somehow Arvid Lipblad ensured that okay, Verstappen is unable to qualify further and goes out in Q2. Of course, Verstappen was a lot complaining about the car, which really comes to show that okay, how the entire car is designed to. Earlier, Verstappen used to get a card which was ready-made from Adrian Newey, Christian Horner, and they used to make a package for him and he used to shine. But as they say, right, even when Hamilton, normally we say that okay, Hamilton has the best car across his entire Formula One career. But there have been rarely few instances when he didn't have the car, yet the driver mattered. For the first time, we are able to see the other side of Verstappen, and it makes me doubt whether it's the talent or it's the car which made Verstappen go as a world champion multiple times.
All right, we'll talk a bit more about Verstappen in a bit and whether battery management is part of his skill set or not. Last but not the least, moving time zones. Hey, Naren, welcome back. And what's your take from the weekend that was?
Thank you, Vivek. Konnichiwa, everybody. So I would probably summarize the race like usual with the biggest winners and biggest losers. The biggest winner, of course, is Kimi Antonelli. He had a wonderful form uh, throughout the race, although he had issues at the start of wheel spin and losing places. He did manage to win. Also, Oscar Piastri, he probably was having a turmoil in the first two races of not even starting, and then he is on the top at the moment. So I would say biggest winners were Kimi and Oscar, in my opinion. The biggest losers, of course, were Aston Martin. Fernando Alonso had a P13 in quali, but he moved back to P18. The entire car is probably not that great. And Oli Behrman, which we probably will be discussing soon, is something of a crash that nobody expected. He had a crash of 50G, which and we were actually seeing him limping out of the car after he had the crash. So that's probably one of the biggest losers. And of course, we had George Russell, who had P2, but he finished P4, which is outside of the podium. So, but overall, this the whole highlight of this race was the incident. Even though it was probably not a collision between two cars, it was probably a thing that made everybody think of whether this regulations is correct, whether the engine regulation are correct, overall regulations are correct, and such. So probably I would say many people have suggested that this is something that should not have happened, but at least it happened now.
Yeah, with that, I mean, as you said, PS3 got third time lucky this season, and that got him onto the podium with the finish. From your standpoint, and this goes out to any one of you, right? Like after the first two races, we thought it was like a two-horse race, uh, with pack of horses leading way ahead. But with the third race, we saw McLaren sort of getting back into the mix. How do you say think this will bode well for racing as we get into the rest of the year to see a lot more action in the front?
Okay, I'll take this. In the previous race, I had already commented this out, stating that okay, McLaren has the same engine as Mercedes, so they have the rocket ship. They just have to understand the package, the aero concepts was what was missing. It seems that okay, McLaren have truly understood what the package is about. They understood that okay, where the Mercedes engine was excelling and how they can build a package around it to come to excellence. You saw that in the previous two races, we had Mercedes and Ferrari fighting, and this race suddenly Ferrari was unable to even like hit out on McLaren's. The way they were performing, even in qualifying, even during the race, it really shows that okay, the Mercedes engine is a way top notch above others. It really also begs the question from the constructors is also why Williams are struggling, and that's the reason why they have a reorg going on. But it truly says that okay, when you have an engine, you should normally have a aero package which is good enough, and then it will easily help you well. Considering this, if Mercedes's engine development program goes on further developing in this entire April break, you would see that okay, they would build a better rocket ship, and that would also benefit their customer teams. And probably it might not be a three-way horse, but it might be a more three, four, five-way horse based on how the customer teams are able to jump on the technology.
Got it. Since we are on that stream, I know that there's a couple of proposals that have come in on the basis of which they want to change the behavior of the F1 races based on what we have seen in the two races so far. Any one of you want to share what are some of those proposals and why do they come into play? Because I think before we get into the proposals, it's important we explain to our viewers what does super clipping mean, which also ties into what happened with Berman and from a safety standard standpoint. So anyone wants to give a take on what have we seen in the two races so far and how is the whole battery management coming into play? So Naren.
Yeah, I can take this. Okay, I think I've already explained clipping and super clipping at the very start of the season, which happened in Australia. But for the benefit of the viewers, I will explain it again. Clipping and super clipping is basically clipping is that your battery completely is depleted of energy, but your top speed stays right there. On the other hand, super clipping is your battery is completely drained, but your entire software inside the car allows the turbo to recharge, which means that it is taking energy from the engine to spool the turbo and then recharge the battery, which means that the overall power that is generated by the engine decreases, which also means that the current speed that you're going will be decreased. Let's say the car is going at 300. If it is if it is clipping, the top speed stays exactly 300 kilometers. But if it is super clipping, it decelerates completely. And it's so much so that, let's say, if decelerates suddenly, that there is one car behind, the car actually coming behind will not know what is happening, and he has to maneuver in a way that to avoid collision. So coming back to what happened in Suzuka, this is exactly what happened. Probably before the spoon curve, Colapinto was recharging. If you see, there was some red lights on the back of his car, which means that his car super clipped. And I was actually seeing the telemetry, this speed delta of the two cars, and I saw that the speed at which Oli Behrman was, he was at two, I think at 320 when compared to Colapinto's 280. So, which means that there is actually a 30 to 40 kilometer difference between both. Now, if you see 13, for normal viewers, they will be like, what is 30 to 40 kilometers? Is nothing. But if you compare it to the magnitude of the speed they were going, 300 kilometers per hour, that's like within an instant. So Oli Barman had to go to the other side to avoid the collision because he didn't actually know that the driver in front was decelerating all of a sudden. So that's the whole reason why he actually went into the crash. Now, this actually brings us to the next question of what are the primary changes that they will bring. There is actually a lot on the table which is not officially confirmed. They are saying that we will reduce the battery capacity, storage capacity from 8 megajoules to 6 megajoules. That's number one. That's actually going on. They were saying that you can use arrow at any point in the race. That's something that's going on. So nothing is actually confirmed, and it's all on the table. So, but only time will tell what FIA had to do. One thing is very clear: FIA has missed this race and the engine completely. Engine wrecks completely, I would say.
Yep. I think for viewers, the thematic of what Naren highlighted with respect to some of the proposals that have come in is sort of like how our Wi-Fi keeps on buffering when you're watching videos. The idea, and that's kind of like what clipping, super clipping ends up doing. And when you're doing that, it's like the high speeds that we're talking about. Your reaction times are even higher when you don't expect what is happening suddenly, versus the idea here is by reducing the pack, by allowing for more gradual charging. The idea is that the racing cars follow a certain pattern. There is a slow deceleration or acceleration playing out versus this immediate that what we've been watching, which has made it a lot more dangerous for drivers who now already are at split second. I don't know, now they need like split nanosecond sort of reaction times to be able to take care of these scenarios. And just to make it safer from that point are some of these proposals, which begs the question that everyone's asking. We're becoming more electronic as a race. And there was a quote that someone said, either you have electronic cars or you have racing cars. You can't have both. What are your comments on this?
I can just say once and I can give it in short. I was just before we started this podcast, I was actually watching the show by David Coulthard, Naomi Schiff, and Will Buxton. And they were actually saying that the entire car is currently. Will Buxton specifically was saying that the FIA is bringing another change in 2030 where they are trying to bring in the V8, which is completely run unsustainable fuels that is running right now. So his question was, if you're already going to change the regulations in 2030 by bringing in V8, why are you changing the regulations now by completely changing the car? Of course, David Coulthard and the others were saying that it is to bring in more people, so it gets more entertaining. So the underlying factor is that F1 is actually less of a sport and more of an entertainment these days by having a lot of sponsors, bringing a lot of things that actually doesn't make sense for racing. It only affects the sport. But on the other hand, will this reduce the viewership of the sport that has been followed for almost a century? Maybe not, but people who are new, because of, at least in the last 4 years, we have been seeing Drive to Survive, which increases the Formula One viewership. This might reduce because they are really not knowing what is happening with the current car.
Uh, Speaking of the quote that you put about more entertainment versus sports, I actually just heard about podcast by this group podcast called Acquired, which focuses on the business of any startup or company or organization. And they just dropped one on F1, explaining the business of F1 versus the sport itself, and how Bernie Eccleston haven't heard about him in a while, sort of takes this organization where there were 100 plus constructors over the years, with most of them having an average lifetime of 2 years before they would go bankrupt because they could not understand the business of running a sport like this, and him have basically sort of taking it to that level where it provided a sustainable income for a lot of these constructors to then continue to scale up. And then how the current FIA comes in from a more professional management standpoint, because Bernie was the one man army with a lot of conflict of interest because he was a race promoter, plus owning a race car, plus being FIA, plus having the media rights for FIA. So like all four entities involved, and he got a cut from all four. So an extremely interesting look into how running F1 as a business has allowed F1 as a race or sport to actually increase its this thing. And then, as you highlighted, the Netflix partnership and the Apple partnership was a very conscious decision taken to help increase viewership across the world. So, yeah, shout out to Acquired for folks who want to get a behind the scenes on how this works, and the billions of dollars that play behind the scene to make this happen. But yeah, again, thoughts from everyone else in terms of what Naren just highlighted, that are these regulations, do they make sense? Are they going to drive people away from the sport or introduce more people into the sport?
Totally agree with Naren. If I were to draw parallels to what Naren said, let's take an example of IPL. Today, it's so commercialized as a sport. It's not a sport, again, it's become an entertainment. Then how Lalit Modi, the brainchild who started in 2008, right? So I would put Lalit Modi versus a Bernie Ecclestone because they started with a vision that this is how the sport should be, right? This is how the team structure should be. This is how the game should be played. But over the years, it's changed dramatically. What is the most surprising element to me is that why are FIA and the broadcasters and the promoters and everybody going behind a sustainable energy mode, right? Understand 10, 15 years ago, we had the V12, then we bought it to V8, then to V6, and now we are literally on a 50-50 hybrid kind of a car. When we started the season, it was great. For a spectator, as Naren said, the overtaking will absolutely excite. Oh my God, 50 overtakes happened in the car. This is not a boring race as it used to be, according to them. But where's the passion and the fun? Where's the true driver skills coming into picture? I used to say Formula One was an equal split between the car, the driver, and the strategy. I think today the car has overtaken the 33% mix. And if this continues, I think loyalty will take a huge hit. You will definitely get more audience because it's being promoted and commercialized, and especially in the Americas world, it's been promoted. But if we were to go back to what we were at V6, V8 engines and having a formula, I don't know what you want to call this, a particular hybrid engine at a 50-50 is, I think everybody is going to lose. And we heard Max giving a statement that this is a Formula E on steroids, correct? He said, what the hell? And I might even retire by end of the season if this is what the sport will continue. We might see a huge amount of drivers who are so passionate about it might move away to greener pastures where true racing exists, right? There are still amazing areas, domains of the racing across the world, which may not be always Formula One. Yeah, maybe for the championship, for the teams, for the drivers, it is still a lot more to figure it out. But as a sport, I think it's taking a huge shift from what it was. And the way we are heading in, I hope the regulations or the proposals will bring some positivity by April. We talked about it. There are some 4 or 5 proposals out there, including the weight, the aero, and the clipping. Might change a few bits here and there. Just hope that those things bring back a little bit of more excitement from the racing and keep us on track. Otherwise, we might not just lose Max, but we might lose a few more drivers for the passion of the sport into something else.
Prashant, I love how you use the irony of greener pastures as we talk about F1 becoming more sustainable. Uh, But speaking of exits, by the way, another trivia I got to hear from the Required podcast was Bernie has sold F1 thrice and he never owned it.
Wow.
Now that's pure business sense, but since we're talking about
Wow.
exits and Prashant brought up Max coming up in the public highlighting that he might look to retire from F1 and try out other races, which by the way, he has been trying out with other constructors in other races and doing pretty well as a racer over there. So Vignesh, your thoughts on Max looking to move out, and we know there are a few more exits that have been discussed, part of the off the track conversations we had over the last week.
Yeah. So considering this, okay, as Prashant said, there is an eminent possibility that Max would leave F1. His aspirations are now visible. You are able to see him. He did a GT race in the middle of a F1
Season.
small weekend break where he got, and he almost won thanks to the great divinity of Mercedes, who used an extra set of tires that his entire race was disqualified. But then you see drivers going the other way. Fernando Alonso is another one example where every time he has felt that okay, the F1 was dropping standards, he took part in Le Mans 24 hours. He
Yeah.
ensured using Toyota Gozoo, he was getting that feel of a race. So that clearly shows okay, the drivers don't care about entertainment. What they care about is the true sense of driving. And I see the commercialization aspect, which I see in Formula One, didn't start now. It started when we introduced the street circuits to increase racings and stuff, mainly because Formula One and with the entire digital age technology going in, now viewers have multiple options to look forward to. They have NASCARs, they have Dakar Rally, they have Le Mans, they have Formula E. In order to keep up the hype, they have to do it. That's the part and parcel of the game. But going that way, that okay, you lose your premium set of drivers, probably that would lead to a substantial drop. So Formula One, I believe, would look into it and would take care of it. On the off news, I would say, as I said, with Mercedes engine, if you're not performing, you're bound to have a stick at your back. And one such example is James Walls. He has been a Mercedes guy all throughout. If you see, he was Hamilton's race engineer. The famous Wild Trades James comes from him in a lot of sense. But then when he went to Williams, people thought of a turnaround. It was a family owned business which got acquired, and then they brought in new people, and the business needs to have a forward direction. The first year was considered to be an experimentation, which was good. The second year, they came fifth, which was a very good positive outlook towards their progressive development. And this year, they have somehow fallen behind and giving competition to Audi, a new team on the grid. That, along with them having a Mercedes engine, has not only perplexed Mercedes, but has also perplexed the stakeholders at Williams. And that's the reason that he would be exiting soon and he would be replaced by a very well known figure in Formula One, mostly Christian Horner. The news is yet to come out live, but this is what we expect. The second one is Jonathan Wheatley. Now, we knew that okay, Williams were trying to court a lot of people, and one among them was Jonathan Wheatley. But then you know that Jonathan Wheatley is a very close aide of Adrian Newey. So it has come to our understanding that Jonathan Wheatley is on a gardening leave, following the footsteps of his close friend Adrian Newey. You never know that okay, how big is his gardening leave. But if it's a short gardening leave, you would see him joining Aston Martin and probably changing the favors of Aston Martin. And hopefully, our beloved Fernando Alonso does not get a nerve hit because of the car.
And just to add, right, one more element which I forgot to add in, and when Vignesh was talking, right, we have a few senior drivers who have seen the whole transformation of Formula One over the decades, correct? Definitely, it's something which they've seen over the last 20, 30 years, correct? Or at least 20 years. You look at the new set of drivers like Kimi and Lando and Oscar and Bayman, right? They've not seen the history. They've not seen the past So for them, this is going to be a commercialization, that how fast can they get up to championships and get to a few more wins and podium finishes and make money and commercialization. I think with them, the passion is going to transform. The passion is going to change away. I think this is where I wouldn't say that we don't get new set of drivers. Every year we get new set of drivers. But what's been changing over the last 5 years is that we move people from F3 to F2 and F2 to F1, correct? But their mindsets are changing. And with what FIA and the administration is trying to do is get more and more new set of people who adapt to these greener strategies. I'm using it because it's very important to highlight that. And let the oldies go away. It's a transformation of, let the oldies go out and let the new people coming in. And that's exactly what I think the audience wants. An audience who is not aware will absolutely love a new set of pack, a new set of rules, and a huge race competitive, so-called competitive. But that's not how the world is going to perceive, right? So there has to be a fine balance between all of this. We are not against the commercialization, right? Meaning we all buy jerseys, we buy subscriptions, we watch it, we travel, to see races, correct? So we are contributing to all of it. But the question is that I think somewhere, just like cricket, where the bat is ruling against the ball, I think FIA rules and regulations are superseding all of this to the passion of the sport.
Yeah, just just to say this one thing, that okay, the same thing has also been observed in IPL. You see, right? Okay, even in cricket, if you see, earlier we used to have part-time bowlers. Those have been diminished. They are like a dinosaur variant, we call them now. You have earlier you used to have proper hitters, you had all-rounders. Now you only have hitters and bowlers. You don't have a space where you can experiment and try out. And I believe that okay, the entire world, thanks to Instagram and the Reels fashion, where you have short attention span, you need more drama to retain people. I believe the world is going in that direction. Hopefully, we see a better racing. Hopefully, we see Formula One adapting to a better form of racing. Only time would tell.
Yep. Well, we don't know where FIA and F1 is headed to. Maybe we'll end up in a world where we have drivers called Kimi, Claude, Gemini, and so on. Uh, but we don't know if we're going to how far into the future that is. But on a closing note, from the fact that we have about a month for drivers and constructors to kind of figure out based on the learnings from the first three races, probably because, as folks may be aware, that due to the current geopolitical situation, the Bahrain and Saudi Grand Prix stand cancelled for April, which has given an Easter break, a surprise Easter break for all the constructors at play, which means they're all going to take this opportunity to tweak based on the learnings. So when we get back, quick summary from all of you in terms of who do you think is going to be leading the pack, or where is all the excitement going to be, with the opportunity that people have to work on fixing things up that they've learned from the first three races.
Okay, considering that, okay, we have this big break, before I just give my predictions, I would just want to say that we are absolutely sorry for the 12 tons of Kit Kat which was lost, and the Kit Kat in our homes are not anyway a part of the stolen product. With that, I would want to say that I would see Mercedes continuing further in their rampage, and hopefully not seeing Toto banging any Bose headsets, and hopefully seeing Kimi do a better job. Probably I want him to qualify a little bit less and again prove his standings once again as an absolute driver. But over and over, I see that okay, the second half, at least till the summer break, I see Mercedes being a pure dominating team.
Hey, Kimi is already doing
Absolutely.
that for you. First turn, he lets the Ferraris come front and then comes back, right? Uh, with that, Naren, if you want to go in next.
Yeah. So I would say that at least 2026 has been so volatile for the first three races. So we actually don't know what's going to happen. I would probably keep my bet on the next 1 month where FIA is actually going to predict some changes. And based on the changes, how the cars are going to evolve or change, and based on that, who's going to come first will be very interesting to watch coming, given the fact that we have a street race that's happening immediately after this break. So I'm very sure that FIA will take this super clipping and clipping very seriously, because fortunately they had a big runoff area in Suzuka where Oli was fine now. But I don't think it will be the same case in Miami, because it's all tight turns and it's of course a street race. So at this moment, I will keep my predictions at bay. Wait for the entire entire regulations to evolve, find what FIA is taking on, and then probably I will say my predictions.
Yep. So wait and watch policy over there. And last but not the least, Prashant.
Well, to be honest, Mercedes will continue to gain. See, they're already at 98 points and probably one of the best starts in the last 1 decade, right? I think in the previous podcast, I think I mentioned this is equivalent to like the Braun kickoff, what Jenson Button did probably a decade ago, that, out of the first 7 races, they won 6. And that still led them to a championship trophy, and not get those points in the second half. I don't expect Mercedes to drop down their quality that drastically in the second half, but they definitely have the edge. They'll continue to maneuver a little bit more in this break. But what I'm excited is this 1 month break gives some opportunity to both Ferrari and McLaren to readjust their strategies, they readjust their cars. But of all of this, I think of all the proposals which has come in, there are two things which I'm super excited about, right? One is the weight part, right? We all know that this season's car has about a 30 kilo weight reduction as compared to the previous year. Okay. And some teams are already overweight. There is a proposal that, can we add a little bit of more weight? And if that happens, your mid-pack cars, yeah, okay, who are struggling in between P8, P6 to say P12, will probably get a little bit more competitive. I don't expect the weight strategy to change drastically for your top cars. The second one is the boost button, right? The boost button is now being used erratically to wherever it's needed, but they're looking at this as a proposal to challenge the defensive angle, right? That if somebody's challenging you, use the boost to kind of safeguard your position. Super clipping and clipping, I'm definitely looking forward for it, but I feel if by end of April, May, if these decisions are taken, and then the true summer break will give the cars to work on it, I think we'll have a much more competitive racing in second half. But at this moment, as I said, with a significant lead, Mercedes will continue, Ferrari close behind, but McLaren will continue to catch up, because at least they have tasted the blood and they would want to rework a little bit more to get some more points.
With that, perfect summary. Arigato to all our panelists for taking time out. And to our viewers, continue to share, like, subscribe, put your comments down there. And let's look forward to a more sustainable reviewership of Toast the Torque while we watch how F1 as evolves with some of the changes that are coming into play as proposals, and as Prashant highlighted, the opportunity for us to see a more competitive racing year ahead, which already is showing green offshoots. And with that, I'll stop with the green puns. But thanks a lot, everyone.
Thank you. Good night.
Fortress made of steel, drama on track you cannot conceal. Racing hearts and burning tires, paddock talk, it's full of fires, thundering past the checkered lines, stories told in sharp decline. Toast the torque and feel the speed, fans unite. a cherished win.